years, there have only been 67 officially recognized miracle cures. Joan Nichol, a paranormal investigator and author, has a theory about these numbers.
So few people are healed at Lourdes that it's just not impressive. In fact, most people who go to Lourdes are not healed at all. We could make a case, if we were mean-spirited, about all the people who go and go home and die. But we don't do that. What we do is we look for those cases that seem like dream stories, and we make a case out of that.
Regardless of whether or not this is true, the miracles of Lourdes offer comfort to those in need. But there are people who go even further and look to the spirit world. In Abergavenir, they visit the medium João, who practices spiritism at the Casa de Dom Inácio. João claims to be able to channel the spirits of deceased healers, a group of more than 30 dead doctors and saints, referred to as the entities. With the help of translators, patients write down their ailments and then file past João. Sometimes he prescribes herbs or crystal baths, or he waves the patient on for more meditation. But curiously, he only speaks Portuguese, regardless of which entity is in his body. The entity then guides him through whatever operation or treatment it recommends. People willing to volunteer for surgery can opt for a visible or invisible procedure. Visible surgeries include making superficial cuts in the abdomen or chest, scraping a patient's eyeballs, and inserting a surgical tool up their nose. These operations can be viewed as symbolic, as they are applied to a multitude of illnesses that don't necessarily have anything to do with vision, nasal passages, or the abdomen. But João explains that visible surgery is not for everyone.
This is for the ones who don't believe in God's power, because the operations are all spiritual, and they are performed by the good spirits who come from God and by God himself.
But there is another option: invisible surgery. For this, patients are sent into a particular room where they meditate with their hand over the ailing body part, while João channels an entity. For the next 40 days, they must avoid spicy peppers, pork, alcohol, and sex. Otherwise, the surgery won't work. Paul Herlihy came to Abergavenir over a year ago after being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. He's had many invisible surgeries.
I was here for 6 months and I didn't feel anything, any of the energy, nothing at all. And one day I was sitting in the Casa and I suddenly started to feel cuts going across my tummy, somebody cutting me open. And that feeling went up into my heart, where it is now.
Paul believes that the energy João channels in the current room is healing him.
I do feel that there's things around me that I can't see. It's scary at first, it was to me, when it started to happen last year. Then I just got used to it and just became normal. It's a bit like a TV or radio frequency. I just feel there's someone there looking after me.
Paul left his home in England and moved to Abergavenir, where he'll stay for 2 years. Modern medicine has little to offer him. Besides sitting in currents, patients are instructed to drink blessed water, eat a midday meal of soup, and take the herb passiflora, also known as passion flower. But does it have healing properties? Jesse Ireland runs the pharmacy and is responsible for purchasing the herb.
It is all the same herb, but the entities write on what they want this matrix to be, to become, like a medicine for all kind of disease. And then turns into the medicine for a headache, for cancer, for whatever. It's very interesting.
Essentially, it's a simple cure-all that can be applied to any condition. Jessie and the Casa visitors believe that the spirits of the dead use the herb to help them heal, and some go even further.
The treatments that happen here come from this medicine, from the future. So they bring these treatments to us right here, right now.
I believe the herbs are infused with an energy by the entities for each specific person, and it's just a material manifestation of that energy that we can take with water, the blessed water, 3 times a day.
Unlike Lourdes, there are no official numbers to calculate how many people João has seen in the last 47 years, nor how many have been cured, but several hundred arrive each week at the Casa. And like Lourdes, people come from all over the world. There's no charge to be seen by João, but the Casa accepts donations and sells the water, herbs, CDs, books, and occasionally crystal beds to cover its costs. But with only anecdotal evidence and no proof of cures, why do people look for healing from someone with no medical background? One who claims to channel the dead and scrapes eyeballs. Brazilian Dr. Eliam Cardoso questions João's methods.
I am totally against shamanism, absolutely against charlatanism. But this is not a medical issue. It is a matter to be approached from a judicial perspective.
In fact, John of God has been repeatedly sued for practicing without a medical license. To date, most of the cases have been dropped, and João has returned to Aberdeenshire to continue channeling and, as he believes, healing. But Joe Nickel thinks there's no such thing as a faith healer.
People like him are of 2 kinds. One kind has no healing power, but they believe they do, and we call them fantasy prone. The other type also has no healing power. They know they don't, and we call them charlatans. And some of them are a little of both.
João doesn't claim to be practicing medicine, nor to have healed anyone. Rather, he says he's a medium, a tool in the hands of a higher being.
In these 47 years of mission, I have never cured anybody. What cures is God, the good spirits, everybody's faith.
Patients like Matthew and Paul can't explain João's success, but both are ardent believers. So just what's going on in Aberdeenshire?
My 3rd week here, I met my wife, and we fell in love right away, and that's what heals here, is the love, the love.
Do faith and love offer access to supernatural cures? Or does the explanation for these incredible tales of healing lie in the human mind itself? For those who believe in God, prayer is an important way to demonstrate their faith. People often pray for the sick, and prayer is widely believed to influence a patient's recovery. But is prayer actually effective, and can it be tested? Many people have tried to do just that. Studies into the efficacy of prayer have doubled in the last 10 years, but the results are inconclusive. A paper published in the American Heart Journal in 2006 made a thorough study of intercessory prayer in groups of cardiac bypass patients. But the authors concluded that intercessory prayer was medically ineffective. Esther Sternberg, a medical researcher and author, reviewed the study.
There was no difference, either negative or positive, in the groups that were told they may or may not be prayed for.
In fact, the patients that knew they would definitely be prayed for actually developed more heart arrhythmias. One suggestion is believing they needed prayer might have made them more anxious. Critics of these and other studies point out that testing prayer is an impossible task. So perhaps it isn't possible to scientifically demonstrate prayer's effectiveness. But there's one other factor common to our three cases, and this one is easy to analyze: water. The Washington Suburban Sanitation Commission is one of the 10 largest water and wastewater utilities in the United States. It performs 500,000 tests a year to ensure that the water drunk by the 1.6 million residents of the DC metropolitan area is safe. We asked technicians here to run tests on water from Lourdes, Reverend Jenkins' Crusade, and the blessed water from Abergavenny. They tested for bacteria, chemicals, and other anomalies, and what they found was nothing more than ordinary H2O. All the samples were safe to drink, and none had unusually high pH levels or inordinate amounts of iron or zinc. In fact, they were completely unremarkable. But Jack Perrier, the Bishop of Lourdes, says it's not surprising the water appears ordinary.
A lot of analyses have been done to this water that did not demonstrate anything extraordinary in the chemical composition. When Bernadette was asked about these healings, she would always reply that it was not the water acting like a kind of medicine, but it was the faith and the prayers bound into a sign.
There's nothing apparently curative in the water, but what about the passion flower? The Casas Pharmacy dispenses capsules of 200 milligrams of Passiflora alata, one of 400 varieties of passion flower. It's known to be a sedative, and in small doses it may have a calming effect, but it's not a miracle cure. Faith seems to be the drug that medicine can't furnish, and people are willing to pay for that. Those in the United States searching for physical and spiritual healing helped to finance 2,500 radio and television evangelists in a multi-billion-dollar-a-year operation. But with that kind of money involved, there's a serious danger of exploitation. Only Anthony started the Trinity Foundation, a Christian watchdog group in Dallas. He believes that televangelists should be held accountable for what they say over the airwaves. And he's dedicated the last 20 years to investigating their claims.
They're great manipulators, and they're people who have been that way throughout history.
Anthony suggests that the Crusades are not about healing as much as they're about increasing the financial donor pool.
These meetings are done to increase the mailing list, to fill out the cards. So they get you on your name and address, and then they milk you over and over.
Anthony and his staff have attended and watched tapes of several thousand televangelist shows as part of their investigations, and they've seen how people routinely get caught up in the excitement of the crusade.
This shoe, it is done by the power of God in Jesus' mighty name. Somebody praise the Lord.
When they first go into an arena or into one of these meetings, they've already suspended critical judgment. Then there's all kinds of effects that take place afterwards, all the way up to and including positive and negative hallucinations. It's the power of the human mind.
I want to see you wave both of your hands that have received a blessing from God today.
Leroy Jenkins claims that God talks to him so he can help those looking for answers.
53 people out of all of this crowd have cancer. 22 of you have already been operated on. 7 of you have had cancer to return. But all of you are under the anointing of God right now, and no cancer, I declare, is going to touch your body. And you with cancer are going to leave here without cancer. And the devil and his angels can't put nothing on you that you don't allow. Are you ready?
Is God telling Leroy Jenkins who has cancer and who needs healing? Or do some people just need the belief that they're healed, whether this comes as a message from God or via a more natural process?
God's giving you a supernatural miracle right now. I want you to lay your hands right here and say, I am healed by the power of God in Jesus' name.
People need to believe. And these people are desperate. And they badly want to believe that they're healed. They want to believe that the power of God has come upon them.
That belief may have a real physical benefit. Stress hormones in the brain can weaken the body's immune system, reducing its ability to fight disease. But lowering stress levels helps the immune system produce chemicals that aid in healing. This physical reaction may be an important element in the phenomenon known as the placebo effect. Dr. Esther Sternberg has written extensively about the subject.
The placebo effect is the belief in healing, the belief that something will cure the patient. It could be a pill, it could be a prayer, it could be anything. The placebo effect is a very powerful effect. It's been estimated that about 30 to 90% of the effect of any drug or any treatment of any sort comes from the placebo effect, depending on the treatment, depending on the individual, depending on the disease.
Believing in the possibility of a cure could play a part in the healing process itself.
You believe it? You believe it? You believe it?
I believe that.
You believe what just happened to him? Isn't that a miracle?
So could the placebo effect be responsible for what many people think are miracle cures?
The placebo effect alone is not going to cure, especially when you have illnesses like cancer. Together with medical treatments, it will help a great deal. But anybody seeking these kinds of treatments must remember, buyer beware.
The power of suggestion is potent at a healing site, and you absolutely can be impressed with the mood music, with the charisma of the leaders. They're creating an atmosphere and an expectation of healing. People can feel better. They are distracted from their ailments. They've been given positive reinforcement. Their endorphins are producing an anti-pain effect. The problem is that those people who have thrown away their canes, when we follow up, we find that they've had to buy new canes or crutches.
In Aberdeenshire, this room full of abandoned crutches certainly seems to indicate that cures have occurred. But is this evidence of unexplained intervention, or could there be something less miraculous going on? A trip to the circus may offer an explanation for some supposed cures. Paranormal investigator Joe Nickel pays a visit to a carnival performer at a sideshow museum. He's come to see just what might be behind Joao's surgical feats.
Meet the human toolbox, the anatomical wonder, the human blockhead. He will daze and amaze, amuse and confuse. Ladies and gentlemen, Swami, your mommy.
There's nothing better for when the back of your neck is itching.
This should never be tried at home, except by magicians or possibly people who channel dead surgeons.
It's actually quite simple, and it's based on the principle that the cavity that goes back, the sinus cavity, is really quite deep and will accommodate a screwdriver or what have you. It's really not frightening as it looks.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years, never had an injury or a problem. I was properly trained to do it, but when you know what you're doing, it slides right in.
But what about John of God's other surgical feats? Cutting through the skin of the midriff and scraping eyeballs.
What most people don't realize is that the white of the eye, the sclera, doesn't have a lot of nerve endings. You can actually touch it without doing any harm, take a blunt scalpel and touch it directly to that part of the eye.
Not much feeling there.
No, not at all. And of course, anybody who's been to an eye doctor knows that there are drops you can put on the eye to numb it. I think between those two things that the eye scraping is pretty easily doable.
Exactly, and as far as the cutting the midriff, it's a fatty area. Only the skin is sliced through. It's not a deep cut at all. And the bottom line of all this is that it's medically useless, it's worthless, it has no beneficial effect whatsoever.
Exactly.
Joe Nickel went to investigate Joao when he came to Atlanta in 2006.
It's astonishing to me how readily people follow him. He seems to be able to attract people and to just bypass their critical faculty. They want to believe so strongly that he takes utter advantage of that, and they will follow him like sheep, and I do think that he's a cult figure in that sense.
Nickel doesn't believe in miracles and has several answers for what's happening at healing sites.
Some illnesses like multiple sclerosis, some kinds of cancer, are known to simply go into remission for reasons that we're not sure about, but that don't necessarily imply anything miraculous or non-scientific.
Spontaneous remissions of cancer may be rare, but even 1 in 60,000 may explain why someone visiting a faith healer or shrine would appear to be cured.
There's also misdiagnosis. Doctors go for what may be the most obvious diagnosis given a few symptoms that you tell them. Every doctor misdiagnoses. The best doctors misdiagnose.
Could misdiagnosis be a possibility in the case of Matthew Ireland? After 2 years in Aberdeen, Matthew feels sure he's completely healed. But is the tumour still there? Matthew is willing to put his faith to the test, so he's sent for his original MRIs and now heads to a clinic for testing. An entity that Joao channels told Matthew the tumour would be gone. For a few tense days, he waits for the results. He and his new bride are eager to start a family, but first they'd like to know that Matthew is cancer-free. After careful analysis of the MRI scans, medical experts conclude that the tumour mass has shrunk by 50%. Matthew attributes this to his time in Brazil. But is it a miracle? The tumour is still there. And before leaving the United States, Matthew underwent aggressive radiation treatment. His former oncologist thinks it's more likely that the radiation was responsible for the shrinking tumour. And he also doesn't rule out the possibility that the tumour type might have been misdiagnosed. For Matthew, the important thing is that the cancer's shrinking. But for every seemingly miraculous cure, critics point out that there are thousands of people who continue to suffer.
If people simply were getting a little placebo effect from Dr. Feelgood, that would be okay. Who could oppose that if that's what actually happened? But when we hear that people feel better, we must remember that there are also those stories that we're not getting.
William Vanden Kolk's story is one such example. He suffers from juvenile X-linked retinoschisis, a disease which limits his peripheral vision and his ability to see up close. Although he can see, his vision is badly impaired. When William was 9 years old, he went to a televangelist's crusade with a neighbor, while Randy Melfratter, the uncle who raised him, was working. William saw others asking for healing on stage and decided to go up as well.
I just walked up there and said, "Can you please heal me?" Those were my exact words.
His uncle watched the show a week later and saw Benny Hinn tell the audience that William was cured.
The Lord has told me tonight to help you. William is blind, but God opened his eyes tonight. William can see. He can see. He can only see this close, like this.
It was hard because, I didn't expect to see William standing there on stage in front of all these people crying. I mean, it was very emotional. Even today, I can't watch it without, kind of cheering up because he was so little.
Can you follow me? Come on, sweetie, follow me.
It seemed to be a miracle, but was he really cured?
I had that mind over matter thing, is what I had. I had that instant, I can see pretty well, but not perfectly. And then, as soon as I got home, it kind of started declining. Now I can't really see that well.
The televangelist website referred to William's experience as an example of a truly amazing miracle. But in fact, William's eyesight was no better than before the crusade.
It was about 2 weeks after it happened. We were sitting back on the couch. I asked him, I said, "Do you still feel like it's getting better? Do you feel like you're seeing better still?" And William just kind of cocked his head to the side a little bit, and he says, "I think God's just taking a break." That was hard.
Since then, William has got special glasses that help his retinoscusis, and he recently applied to an experimental program with the National Eye Institute, which may offer hope of an eventual cure. Many evangelists claim that miracles are a matter of faith, but Ole Anthony of the Trinity Foundation warns that the promise of a miracle cure can have deadly consequences.
We've seen this so many times, where people stop taking their medicine, and they die in many cases, because they believe it would be a breach of faith once the evangelist said they were healed to gain any medical attention.
This was the case with Mary Elizabeth Turk. In 1990, Mary saw the televangelist Robert Tilton on TV. She believed that he promised medical miracles in return for donations, and she sent countless checks. She put her complete faith in this promise, and she refused any medical treatment. When she finally did go to hospital, it was too late to treat her colon cancer, and she died within months. We attempted to contact Reverend Tilton for comment, but he didn't respond.
In your sickness, lift your hand.
The faith of those who believe in miracles often inspires them to make their own spiritual journeys. Whether or not she was miraculously cured at Lourdes, Anna Sant'Agnello has devoted her life to helping others. She spends her days in frequent prayer for others in need.
They call me from places that you cannot imagine. I beg the Madonna. I say lots of rosaries for the people.
But there's a grim irony in Bernadette's miraculous spring that many people would prefer to forget. The waters of Lourdes did nothing to save Bernadette herself from a terrible death from tuberculosis at just 35 years old. There seems to be no way to predict who will be cured and who will not. Critics say that making strength of faith or purity of spirit the criteria is cruel to those who continue to suffer and even die. But until medical science solves the mysteries of how the human body heals itself, Petter Gay, Paul, and others will continue to hope for miracles.
I believe in miracles, and I believe that I'll feel better.
John of God, the medium, tells me that my symptoms are going to disappear, and that I've been patient and I need to be more patient. I'll be one of the lucky ones, I hope. That's what it feels like anyway, in time.
I promise you, if somebody says or implies they're a healer, you should run from them, because they've polluted the mystery of God with the flesh.
I've never seen a miracle. Miracle is defined as that which is attributable to a supernatural agency, and I've investigated such things for more than 30 years, and I've not found anything that I thought was beyond science and nature.
In the end, perhaps the figures speak for themselves. Of the millions of pilgrims that have visited Lourdes over the past century, only 67 confirmed miracles have taken place. But despite the odds, believers driven by hope or desperation will continue to search for miracle cures.